Hello and welcome again to another Catholic Concern for Animals webcast. And um, we're today looking at the past year for Catholic Concern for Animals in the build up to Christmas and during Advent, and of course, what we're planning to do next year. And I'm delighted to have my friend and colleague, Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Concern for Animals, Chris Fegan, with me to tell us all about what CCA has been up to and what we intend to be doing in the next year, which will certainly help me. Chris, how are you? All right?
Gerald, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. So what's been the kind of highs and lows of the last year for CCA and for you?
Well, it's been a difficult year. I think I need to stress that in many respects. Now, the standout event, frankly, of the year for Catholic Concern for Animals has to be the publication of Laudato Deum, because this is a papal document, it's exhortation.
Mhm.
And it's been described in various ways as a follow up to Laudato Si, as an addendum to Laudato Si, whatever people choose to describe it as. But that clearly is the standout document and thing for um, as a Catholic charity.
Yeah,
Um, I have to say, and we've actually published a formal response to Laudato Deum already, which is available on the CCA website for people to read.
yeah.
I have to say, unfortunately, from our perspective, there's no way of getting around this, but Laudato Deum is disappointing.
Do you think we were partly at fault ourselves because we built up such an expectation for Laudato Deum? I mean, Laudato Si was such a groundbreaking change in terms of Catholic approaches to creation as a whole, to animal welfare. I mean, were we expecting too much from Laudato Deum?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. And if we were, that's my fault, I guess, because I have to say, when I heard that Pope Francis was going to be publishing a new document, I did get very excited, and perhaps I expected too much. And if indeed, people may or may not know that as soon as I heard about Laudato Deum, I thought, right, I will go to COP28, which is actually on while we're recording this interview, of course,
Yeah,
because I thought this new document would be good, and I'll be able to say, look what the Pope has said regarding climate emergency and the non-human creation animals and industrialized farming, for example, and the effect that is fairly clear now on industrialized farming on climate emergency. So I was quite excited. So perhaps I got too excited. I don't know. But I came down to it fairly swiftly when I read the document, and well, the first thing I did was cancel any plans to go to Dubai for COP28.
well, to be fair, Chris, there are a lot of other organisations, a lot of other people who are expecting a stronger statement in terms of animal welfare in Laudato Deum, weren't there? I mean, it wasn't just you or CCA, but uh, I mean, apart from the Laudato Deum, apart from things inside the Catholic Church, it's also been a bit disappointing out there in the real world of things that affect animals directly in terms of animal policy, hasn't it? I mean, both in the
Oh,
UK and in Europe, there have been major setbacks with regard to animal policy.
oh yeah. I mean, it's not been the greatest of years, frankly, in regards to institutionalized statements. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, and one of the major disappointments, in fact, perhaps the major disappointment in terms of animal welfare policy, was the fact that the European Commission seemed to have ditched the commitments they have given to the animal welfare family in regards to legislation European-wide legislation that was promised, and was promised on the back, frankly, of European citizens initiatives that were, that we believed had some binding influence on the Commission and the European Union as a whole. So they were basically ripped up, frankly, by the President of the Commission 2 to 3 months ago, which is incredibly disappointing. And I know CCA's colleagues across Europe in the animal welfare family, animal advocacy family, all across Europe, and obviously our umbrella organisation of Eurogroup for Animals, are really disappointed. And frankly, we feel let down. I think we have been let down by the European Commission. So that is very disappointing, to say the least. We've then had perhaps a more, in some ways, expected long gratting of the United Nations Nexus resolution that was passed in Nairobi, and we've been very pleased when it was passed. That has yet to be translated into the report that the resolution asked for. That seems to be delayed again. And on the one hand, one knows that the United Nations is a slow-moving organization in some regards. But we, the delay here does seem to be dragging on a bit. So not good news from Europe and Brussels, not great news from the United Nations. I think you might have mentioned the United Kingdom there. I mean, frankly, I don't want to say too much about the United Kingdom because it's pretty chaotic, frankly. It's about the best I can say about it.
Yeah. Who knows what's going on tomorrow?
Well, absolutely. I mean, who knows what's going to happen by the end of this conversation in the UK? But I don't want to dwell too much on the internal politics.
That's fair enough. I mean, I would just, kind of probably, will just add that it seems to be a general political malaise at the moment across the world, that governments, policymakers are really in a pretty confused and chaotic state, almost everywhere one looks. But yeah, certainly that's no excuse for what's going on in our own backyard, as it were.
Well, I mean, to be fair, to balance that out, I'll try and balance that out by saying that the government, the United Kingdom government, have just published a live exports bill.
They have.
So that was in their King's speech very recently, and they've just published the bill. I understand the second reading will be fairly swift before Christmas. So we'll see. We'll wait. As you say, things change very quickly at the moment, but that is my understanding as we speak now, that bill has been published and it will have second reading before Christmas.
Okay, so the environment in which we're working, and I mean, I think one of the interesting things here is that if you look at, for example, the United Nations and the Vatican and the Laudato Deum, there's a similar kind of disconnection between the concern for climate change and the role that animal welfare and industrial agriculture plays in the issue of climate change. And that, for me, seems to be a strange dislocation. I don't know whether it does to you, Chris.
Well, I find it very bizarre. This is why I said, about revisiting the issue of the Laudato Deum, why I found it so disappointing, because as far as I'm concerned, and obviously other people might have a different view, but from as I'm concerned, the science has made it extraordinarily clear now that there is a correlation, direct link between industrial animal agriculture and the climate emergency. There are other links, of course, not the only reason why we have a climate emergency. There are obviously other factors as well. But it is clearly a significant issue. And I don't understand how that issue cannot be spoken about. And I don't see it in COP28. I don't see it certainly in Laudato Deum. I don't see it particularly anywhere except in the scientific community, the experts that some people try to ignore have made it abundantly clear. And it was been abundantly clear for a number of years. It's not new. And I just don't understand how this cannot be centre of the public debate around the climate emergency. I fail to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. In terms of there've been a series of environmental, in terms of the context in which we work, setbacks. But how do you think the year has gone for CCA itself, for our work, for the work that we do?
Right. Well, I think in that respect, we've had a good year as best we can, despite the issues of the situations we have to work within. You know, the issues of that we've just discussed. I mean, we've done quite some good work with colleagues on one of our long-standing issues, which is the issue of bullfighting. Now, this for CCA is a totemic issue. The fact that, despite the fact that in this case the Vatican has for centuries had a strong position, other parts of the church have chosen to ignore that, particularly in Spain, but not only in Spain, have ignored the Vatican's view on the horrors of bullfighting. And it's clearly not a good history that the church in countries like Spain with bullfighting, and the fact that the church has been, in my word, I will use this word, complicit in bullfighting in certain parts of the world. So this for us is a big issue, and we have been working for a number of years on the subject with colleagues across Europe and elsewhere, in Latin America as well. And one of the highlights of the year for us was the fact that we worked with our colleagues to go to Marseille when the Pope himself was in Marseille making a visit so earlier this year. And we went, and it was obviously a very, very large Catholic community there to hear the Pope, apart from his discussions with President Macron, for example, as well as while he was there. And he had a huge mass in Marseille at the Velodrome, I think, where that 60,000 people were there. So there was a lot of Catholics in Marseille for that, including many clergy. And we went with our colleagues and we made it clear our position regarding bullfighting and how we thought it was horrendous and needed to be stopped. And so that was a highlight. And of course, there are ongoing attempts to get the French state to ban bullfighting, because of course it still happens in France as well as Spain and other places. So that was a highlight, our work on that, and that will continue in 2024. Now, and as I've said before, I'm not promising that we're going to end bullfighting tomorrow, because it's a very large, ambitious project we're undertaking to end bullfighting in Catholic countries. This has been going on for centuries and centuries and is embedded in these societies, in parts of these societies. But that is an ambitious target we have set ourselves, and we'll continue to work on that next year. And I think we've made some progress this year.
I think one of the features of our year for me, and through the bullfighting campaign, through the campaign about circus animals that we had earlier in the year as well, has been the fact that I feel that we have worked well, developed and strengthened our relationship with many other organisations. I mean, you mentioned Marseille, where we actually worked with PETA on that particular event, but we worked with a number of other organisations on the circus campaign. We had a whole range of organisations who joined us in that protest. Do you feel that's something which we can be proud of, be pleased of, that kind of way in which we build relationships with others in the animal welfare community?
Absolutely critical that we do that, and we have done that. One of the things I'm most proud about over recent years is that we are a well-established, respected part of the animal welfare, animal advocacy community now. People want CCA involved in what they do, and we want them involved with what we do. And that is a position that perhaps wasn't there previously in previous times, but in the last number of years, we have established ourselves as an important member of the animal advocacy movement. And every time I speak to my colleagues in the other organisations, they are very, very pleased that we're involved in whatever the subject matter is. So I'm very pleased with that. And, you know, as I've said repeatedly, and I'm very proud, I think, and I'm about to say this, aren't I, because I'm biased, that CCA is the most visible, important, faith-based animal welfare organisation, certainly in Europe, and I would argue globally. So I'm very proud of that.
Well, again, I am biased, but I wouldn't disagree with you on that, Chris. Well, I think you know, involvement in the UN, in Eurogroup for animals, in things. I mean, we had James Yates recently at our annual conference, and the World Federation is another organisation that we have really had a part in, and those kind of things I think are tremendous.
Well, that's you've raised a very good example there. That when I ask people like James, chief executive of the World Federation for Animals, to be our guest speaker at our annual general meeting, there's no hesitation. He says yes. Now, you know, the chief executive of the World Federation for Animals wouldn't be speaking to us unless he thought we were worthwhile speaking to, and you know, so and we've had in the past very, very prominent speakers at our annual meeting. Philip Limbury, for example, currently president of Eurogroup for Animals, the chief executive of Compassion Will Family, has spoken at our AGMs in the past. I could go on and name a number of people.
Yeah.
So these people wouldn't be speaking at our AGM if they didn't feel we were worth engaging with.
Yeah, and indeed our past YouTube conversations with people like David Clough, Gary Franconi, and others demonstrates this kind of engagement as well. Okay, so 2023, not a year we're necessarily going to look back on and think it was a major advance for animal welfare. What about 2024? What are we looking forward to? What are we going to be doing as an organisation to try and change things in a positive way for animals and for creation in 2024?
Okay, well, 2024, I have already labelled the big year of elections. I don't think that's, I can't really patronize, very obvious, a big year of elections. We have two elections that we know when they are. That is because they are fixed dates, which is the European parliamentary elections and the United States presidential election. And of course, we have a UK parliamentary election as well, presumably in 2024. There is a possibility, outside possibility, that could go to early 2025. That's in the gift of the British government when they choose to have that election, whereas the other two are fixed dates. All three, in my view, are interlinked clearly. You know, if nothing else, by trade, and this is one of the issues I'll come on to. So you have important European elections. You have very important, well, they're all important, obviously, elections of this magnitude, presidential election and the British parliamentary election. Now, the issue I mentioned there is trade, which links them all. And this is because the issue of trade has probably, and I don't think I'm in any danger of being contradicted too much here, has risen significantly since Britain left the European Union. Because now, whereas Britain was obviously a part of the European Union and the trade negotiations went on as a bloc with people like the US, one of the issues, and we mentioned it earlier about Brexit, was that one of the issues that was claimed for Brexit, it would allow Britain to negotiate new trade deals with various parts of the world. And one of the issues we already mentioned earlier was a live exports bill, which is coming back to Parliament, one hopes, before Christmas. That was argued, and is argued still, as a possible benefit, post-Brexit benefit, that Britain can now ban live animals to slaughter, which they couldn't do while they were a member of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big concerns, of course, about trade is that we have still got very high animal welfare standards compared to a lot of the world.
Yeah.
Now, you and I, and I'm sure a lot of people in our movement would like them to be even higher, but comparatively speaking, they're very high. What we do not want is those welfare standards being ripped up and even reduced to try and negotiate trade deals. And this is where, of course, the United States is very significant. One of the alleged benefits of Brexit would be a proper new trade deal with the United States. And in fact, I remember one of the previous prime ministers, I've slightly lost track of which one so long ago, I think it was Mr. Johnson, claiming that there'd be a very, very quick trade deal with the United States. And the Brexit would be delivered very swiftly, and this deal would want. We haven't got that yet. One of the major concerns from us, of course, is the import of low welfare standard products into the UK, and not only demolishing our animal welfare standards, but probably demolishing our farming industry at the same time, because of the price differentials. So clearly, what happens in the US presidential election is significantly important. Clearly, what happens in the European parliamentary elections is important. Bear in mind what I said about the commissions ignoring the legislation we were promised. And of course, the UK, as now somebody who sits outside the EU, but still a very significant player, not least of which because it's high welfare standards. We don't want those to lower here or anywhere else. So very, very big year. So because of that, one of our main objectives from our main focuses will be industrialized farming and trade negotiations. Next year, we'll be keeping an eye, as we do anyway, but keeping an eye very closely on any trade deals that are being discussed, wherever they're discussed, and the effect on animal welfare standards. And we know the horrors of industrialized intensive farming. Unfortunately, rather than decreasing, it seems to be increasing around the world. We know of parts of Asia, China in particular, where the growth of industrialized intensive farming is going on very, very strongly. And so we seem to be pushing a boulder up a mountain a lot on that issue.
Well, yeah, those kind of things are inevitable to a certain extent, aren't they? Because of the way in which areas like China and India are developing. And what I mean, in terms of our focus, what do you think we can do to push this message about agriculture, about trade, about trying to educate people with respect to the choices they will be making in those elections?
Well, the focus will be on those three areas I mentioned: Europe, United States, and United Kingdom, because they're the ones with the big elections. Although I'd love it to be the case, I don't think we're going to have a lot of influence in China, frankly, with their government. Very few people do, only us. Well, but obviously, European parliamentary elections, United Kingdom parliamentary elections, and United States presidential elections, we will, with our colleagues, be able to try and put the case ahead of those elections to the electorate of those areas, and make animal advocacy, animal welfare, and farming and trade in particular a key aspect of those election campaigns. Now, traditionally, when the animal advocacy movement has tried to influence elections, it's been on issues of cruelty. For example, hunting in the United Kingdom, it's been going on for a long time. Issues about the Hunting Act, which I think will be a focus in the forthcoming British election. I think there will be discussion about the 2004 Hunting Act, and there'll be debate around that and other things like badger culls. We've been good at getting those things on the agenda of political parties and debate with the public. Less so on things like trade, because this is the first time for for decades Britain to be able to negotiate its own trade, frankly, through part of the European Union. In the European Union itself, I think we will work with our colleagues to try and firstly make it clear to the European public. Now, of course, what they were expected and told was going to happen in legislation, it hasn't happened, despite the fact they've signed these ECIs in great numbers. Over 1 million people have signed 2 ECIs that now seem to be just being ignored. We'll bring that back in, I'm sure, in the European parliamentary elections. Of course, one of the benefits of different political systems is that in Europe, the Animal Welfare Party is strong because of the electoral system. In the UK, because we have first past the post, it's a different scenario, but they have a proportional system in Europe, and people represent the Animal Welfare Party get elected, and that makes a significant difference, frankly. In the US, clearly, the issue will be whoever the 2 candidates are for president, and there'll probably be more than 2. There'll probably be normally other candidates as well. Yeah. So and frankly, the way United States politics is, to try and get animals on to get any sort of coverage in that election will be difficult. But that doesn't mean we won't be working with our colleagues in the US to try. But clearly that will be, especially if ex-President Trump is a candidate, I think will dominate the headlines rather than anything else. It will be personality-driven election rather than policy, I guess, in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things which is true is that we have been rebuilding as an organisation recently. We have new patrons replacing those that we've sadly lost. We have new trustees. Do you think we are in a better place now as an organisation to take these issues forward?
Well, we're in a different place, that's for sure. And any organisation needs to keep, how can I put this, rejuvenating itself. I found that being like Doctor Who. I know we got a new Doctor Who coming very shortly, if not already either. I've lost track of whether the new Doctor Who is tomorrow. Well, there we are. I know he's on his way. And so we haven't quite got the powers of Doctor Who in rejuvenation, but the message is clear. You have to. It's an old saying, I think. I'm not sure who it's attributable to. If you stand still, you're going backwards. And you have to always be looking forward, looking to rejuvenate, looking to get new members, get new supporters, have people in positions of influence. And we have been doing that, as you rightly say. And it will continue in 2024. Let me make that clear. There are always ongoing discussions about new patrons, about new trustees, about new people joining the organisation in various different roles. And you have to refresh. And we have done that, and we'll continue to do that in 2024.
Indeed. Well, I'll just, in passing, say there have been Doctor Who regenerations have not always gone to plan, shall we say? But
well, some of them seem to come back as well. I see. I saw David Tennant was back the other day.
Only the one, to be fair. But yes, only the one. Pretty remarkable. In terms of next year, is there anything else that we need to talk about to highlight in terms of what we're going to be doing?
Well, I think, as we said right at the start of the conversation, that in many ways what we do is framed by the environment we work in. We work in a world in which we work in. I mean, that sounds silly, but it's obvious. And we are in a global situation that I think is very, very challenging all around. I mean, I don't want to go into the state of conflict that we inhabit as a world, but just as an aside, I think I heard very recently that there are 33 wars going on at the moment. 33 wars.
Yeah.
Now, of course, most of the media coverage is taken up at the moment by the horrendous conflicts in the Middle East. So even the Ukrainian war has taken a back step in public media profile to that. The manual of 31 or whatever are that's going on elsewhere. So we live in an age of conflict, frankly.
Yeah.
So one of the issues, and I will actually, you reminded me to say something. One of the issues is, and we've been doing it a little bit in the last part of this year, and we'll be increasingly doing it again, is to highlight the issues of animals caught up in war. Now, I don't think, and I'll be stand to be corrected, but I cannot recall hearing animals mentioned once in the current conflict in the Middle East. Now, clearly, animals are caught up in this conflict, like humans, innocent humans and innocent animals who just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes.
Now, we have actually sent money to both a welfare organization in Israel and sent money to aid animal welfare in Gaza at CCA in recent weeks. Now, getting that money to Gaza is clearly difficult, and we're sending it through intermediary colleagues elsewhere to get in. As soon as they can get into Gaza, they will do so. But, obviously the situation is what it is at the moment. But animals caught up in war. We've sent we've sent a number of donations whilst Ukraine war's been going on. We've now sent donations to Israel and to Gaza, because animals are the hidden victims of this war, of these wars, frankly. And that increasingly, I think I'll probably be speaking up more about this, because it is an issue that I like everybody else. I follow the news. You can't get away from it, even if one wished to. And I've seen lots of coverage on various broadcast media channels, never mind social media and printed media. And I cannot recall anybody discussing the plight of animals caught up in this horrendous conflict.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, Chris, I think we should bring it to end and wish all of those of you out there who have been watching us over the last year or so a cruelty-free Advent and Christmas, and a new year with less suffering for humans and animals, for the whole of creation alike. And I'd also like to thank, because I haven't done so far, the CCA membership, who have in particular, many who have made generous donations in the past few months, and we know our membership is changing, the organisation is changing, and that's very important to us. So thank you to our members. Thank you to those of you out there, and we wish you, as I said, less cruelty and suffering over the coming month and the new year. Anything you wish to add, Chris?
No, just to endorse what you just said there, wishing everyone a happy Advent, a happy and peaceful Christmas, wherever you are. I said to all of creation.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next webcast. Thank you.